Hey everybody, welcome to the Dungeoncast. I'm Brian.
And I'm William.
This is the podcast where we talk about everything tabletop role-playing games.
Today I am explaining 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons.
1, 2, 3, 4. Shout out
Welcome, adventurers, to the Dungeoncast.
Hey Brian,
Hey Will,
how are you doing today?
I am my mind is open. You've been explaining 4th edition for the life of the show.
Yeah, in little bits and pieces.
Yeah.
For sure. And
How are you?
I'm good. I'm very good. Thank you, patrons. You have spoken, and we are listening. I will explain 4th edition in as much totality as I can.
And I'm going to help.
This was a big one.
I played it once.
Yes, you have played. You've played. It was like a 2 or 3 shot. I think we played.
Yeah, I
for
played
you.
like 3 total sessions, which gave me a good feel for what it actually is.
That's all you need. All you need is just a few sessions to see the drastic differences. For those who don't know, I'm actually a pretty big fan of 4E, which isn't to say I think 4E is the ultimate edition of D&D. I've never said that, nor will I say it today. It is a game, so it is an edition so drastically different from any other edition of D&D that I feel like it stands as its own game that you would play 4th edition for different reasons than you would play 5th edition or 3.5, et cetera, et cetera.
I think so. It is the different edition.
Yes, and I'm going to explain the differences of the edition, both mechanically and lore-wise. But yeah, let's get into it.
Okay.
So the patrons have spoken. Our generous benefactors now demand some benefaction of their own, and by the gods, we will give it to them.
By the gods.
That's right. You guys voted, and the vote demands that I pour through the secret histories and lost catalogs of D&D's yesteryear. For what even is 4th edition?
It's the thing that makes people the most mad.
It does. I'm sure many of you have heard much about it, but not actually experienced it or have the full context surrounding its rise and its fall. But I was there. I was there when the will of men failed and Isildur refused to cast the ring back from whence it came.
He was there when it was written.
Yeah. Don't you cite the deep magics to me? Indeed. It's true. Like many of you, I lived through the 4 years, so I also have my own anecdotal experience to draw upon. So today we're going to answer some serious questions. What is 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons? Why is it the redheaded stepchild of the franchise? What makes it different from every other version of D&D? Did it really birth Pathfinder? Spoiler, yes. Was it really the worst thing ever? Spoiler, no. Or does it get a much worse rap than it deserves?
Probably.
Well, let's get into it. The good, the bad, and the ugly of 4th edition D&D, starting with a history lesson.
Okay. Who was the president?
During this time, it would have been Obama, because this came out in 2007.
God damn it. I'm just kidding. Yeah. All right.
You heard it here. Obama created 4E. All right, let's get into it. So Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition was an edition of, or you could say is an edition of Dungeons & Dragons tabletop role-playing game. Rules published by Wizards of the Coast starting in 2008 and ending in 2013. So it really only had a 5-year run, which honestly, though it is a little short, it's not that much shorter than 3rd edition. It succeeded Dungeons & Dragons 3.5, which itself came out only 5 years prior in 2003. Although 3rd edition, which 3.5 is a revived version of, came out in the year 2000. So, 3rd edition, even including 3.5 all the way to the beginning of 3.0, only had an 8-year run. So, despite the generalization that the impetus of 4E was to cash in on a new audience via the video gamification of D&D, the real impetus is pretty multifaceted. Although the rise in the popularity of video games, specifically in RPGs and MMORPGs, did play a significant role. In 2005, D&D had an issue that many, if not all, tabletop RPGs face. The fact that the low cost of the hobby makes selling tabletop RPGs a tough business to sustain in the long term.
Mm-hmm.
This was especially true in the days prior to 5e's explosive success, which, I think a lot of people need to take into account. Like 5e, like D&D has not just not been as, how do I say this? D&D is not just more popular than it's ever been. It is exponentially more popular than it's ever been. The audience was never even remotely this big. So take that into context. When the hobby was still truly niche and considered too nerdy to engage with by even the majority of the nerd community.
Yeah, the stigma was still very thick.
Very, very thick, yes. Sure, third edition and even 3.5 sold quite well, but in the end, a community reaches a peak, and anyone and everyone who's going to buy a core rulebook has already done so. Some would say that 5e is kind of reaching that point where everyone who has bought the core rulebooks has already done so. So, players can also only spend so much time at a table, and honestly, only a few purchases, some dice, and a DM ready to homebrew whatever they don't have printed out can last a group of gamers a lifetime. Some would say that even with 5e's massive popularity, we've reached this point in the lifespan of the current edition. Now, this may sound to us as hobbyists as a so what problem, and there is some merit to that response. We don't need Wizards of the Coast or any other company. There will always be people who want to make tabletop RPGs and people who want to play them. The hobby can never and will never truly die.
Agreed.
But that being said, even prior to the situation leading to 4E's invention, D&D had already almost been lost a couple times due to bankruptcy. The business of publishing D&D as it was not exactly sustainable. There have been examples of popular tabletop RPGs dying for this exact reason. Vampire the Masquerade, for example, was a booming success in the 90s. It even rivaled Dungeons & Dragons for a time. But once the community peaked, sales of the core books dwindled to a point of costing the publishing company, White Wolf Publishing, money instead of them making a profit. And though now, decades later, there has been a resurgence of Vampire due to Kickstarter campaigns and the like, for a long time, all Vampire the Masquerade was merely an IP farm to be licensed for merchandise and for video games to utilize their mechanics and settings.
I see.
The game itself could no longer make any money.
That's rough.
It's rough. D&D in 2005 was, in some people's eyes, approaching a similar fate. And to make it worse, there were two factors at the time making such a fate a more real and looming threat than perhaps it otherwise would be. So firstly, Hasbro bought Wizards of the Coast in 1999. And though the release of 3E the next year and the revised version 3 years later kept D&D profitable enough to evade its new corporate overlord's ire, that time had passed. D&D's profitability was now in question.
Yeah.
To guarantee tabletop D&D avoid the fate of an IP farm, the game needed to be able to prove that it could churn out continuous profit and not just diminishing returns. It needed not only to match its best ever year of sales, but to sustain them at that level. Not an easy task. And honestly, not a task I think any tabletop RPG before 5e has ever actually accomplished. Furthermore, at the time, D&D and all other tabletop RPGs were very much losing their audience to video games. This may seem strange now in a world where D&D and tabletop RPGs have never been more popular, and in the same world that the video game industry is also still booming, but the sentiment was pervasive and quite frankly was probably not wrong. Tabletop RPGs were seeing a decline of new hobbyists as would-be newbies to D&D were instead choosing to spend their time with a digital RPG experience. And among the entire industry, World of Warcraft was seen as the major perpetrator.
I see. It was very popular.
It was extremely popular, yeah. I would say it was so popular, almost everyone I knew was playing it or had played it at the time.
Everybody that I know now that has played it at one point is now playing Dungeons and Dragons or painting minis for Warhammer.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting how the tables have turned.
How the turns table.
So WoW was exploding at the time. In my personal experience, all my high school friends were playing it. Their older and younger siblings were playing it. Teachers were playing it. WoW was immensely popular in the nerd pop culture zeitgeist. And the sentiment at the time was that dungeon masters were literally losing players of their game to it. Conventions were seeing reduced attendance with only diehards continuing to come, while many were literally staying home to play WoW. And thus, the sentiment that D&D needed to start changing to compete and to tap into the new and immense gaming audience of the 2000s took hold.
Yeah.
And
it didn't help that Owen Wilson kept being like, wow.
I find it does help when he says wow. I don't know why. I just get a warm fuzzy every time I hear it.
Right. And then you start playing World of Warcraft. You don't know why. You're like everyone else is doing it.
Here?
But it was actually Owen Wilson. Yeah.
Here's a question. Have you played WoW?
No.
I tried to play WoW. This would have been in like 2011. I got my Worgen Hunter up to level 55, and I just was not into it, and I gave it up.
Yeah, it seemed like a time trap. And
yeah, I didn't get the dopamine that other people were getting. It just didn't do that for me.
I think I heard about it late and then just saw people wasting away. And I was like, I don't know, man. Like, it seems like something I would like, but also something I would like maybe get too much into. Yeah. And at the end, it's like when I finish a really great run of Pokemon and then I look at the game cartridge gathering dust on my desk, like later on, 6 months later, I'm like, why the fuck did I spend 120 hours grinding out like a level 80 Garchomp or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I just didn't feel
fulfilled by it.
yeah, like
You
yeah.
regretted your time with a Pokemon game?
Yeah.
That's really wow. Okay,
yeah.
I mean that's fair.
I mean-
fair. I don't feel the same, but I can understand.
Like I had done runs, too many Pokemon runs probably.
Right?
It's
yeah,
not like
you're burnt out on it.
the first
Yeah.
handful, I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
proud of these mons. And now, you know, well maybe if I could have like 2 runs back, who knows where I'd be.
Well, life would be different.
Maybe I might have gotten into like actual painting instead of just pretending I paint in our short rests.
Okay, maybe. Who's to say?
Yeah.
But regardless, this kind of set the stage for the conception of the new edition. Before we move on, I will say that there were other prominent influences behind the impetus of 4E that went beyond mere sales. Many of the folks who actually worked on 4E saw the new edition as an opportunity to fix D&D's flaws, reduce the growing complexity of the game by streamlining it in comparison to 3E by a wide margin, present actions and effects in a clearly and simply laid out manner, make monster stat blocks much simpler to read and easier to implement both tactically and interestingly, address the linear martial quadratic wizard issue that people have been and are complaining about to this day. This is the martial versus casters argument.
Yeah, high level.
Which is far less severe than it was in 3rd edition.
So there's been improvement. Which
There's been improvement.
is
yeah.
good.
Uh,
I see why the game gets this way. If you have a core audience and they've been playing this game for a long time, and now they want more, you're going to make your game more complicated to, you know, feed the wolf.
That is part of it for sure. And the thing is, I think, and now I'm speaking from my own reasoning here, is that 3E was a direct transport of 2E people. So these people were already interested in D&D. They already knew D&D. So making a more complex system was probably appealing at the time.
Exactly. That's what. Yeah. I worry about it in 5e. I kind of see, you know, there was some complication added, like, you know, overlay races like the Dampier and stuff like that. It's like starts getting a little more complex in the character creation.
Yeah, which I think a lot of people would say is a good thing. And I don't necessarily disagree. I think 5e really hits a particular sweet spot with the general audience of complex versus simple. I think a lot of the RPGs that are more streamlined and simple, though they are good, I think there's a reason they're not as popular. I think people like to have that foundation to hold on to. While if you get more complex, you start getting too crunchy and people can't be bothered. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it becomes, you know, unattainable because you have this mountain of text.
Yes. And I will say for people who are fans of 5e, and they're thinking about trying 4E, although I still encourage you to try it out no matter what, just because it's good to try out new things. If you don't like things that get even remotely crunchier or more complex than 5e, then 4E is not for you.
No.
4E may have been a huge simplification in comparison to 3E, but it is like 3 to 4 times more complex than 5e easily.
I think probably now is a good time to bring up my main point of this episode. Is it's essentially the same game until you get to combat.
To a certain degree, yes.
Yeah.
And then there's the lore aspect, which we will also be talking about.
Yes, that is extremely not the same.
Yes.
This is like the main reason it's not the same is combat and lore. But otherwise, if you're just like homebrewing a table game, like it's the same shit.
Yes, very much so. So, and honestly, there are a ton more issues from older editions that developers at Wizards of the Coast addressed, or at least attempted to address in the new edition. 4E, if anything, was innovative in how it approached tabletop RPGs as a whole, and bold in how radically it was willing to depart from D&D traditionalism. But enough about why 4E happened. Let's actually look at the game itself, and I invite everyone to look at it for what it is instead of for what it isn't. So first, let's talk about the major points of 4E's combat system, which are the most radical and prominent of changes made to the game of Dungeons & Dragons. Like previous editions, 4E has many of the major hallmarks of a D20 D&D system. 6 ability scores with modifiers, attack and damage rolls and modifiers, a skills list, proficiencies, etc. But this is pretty much where the familiarity ends.
May I? Would you like me to read some?
Sure.
It's a chunky episode, right?
Yeah, it is a chunky episode.
Out a little bit.
We are entering the section that is a little bit more bullet point.
Yeah.
So go for
I
it.
thought it was good.
Yeah.
You have class roles. In 4E, all classes in the game, of which there are 4 46, not including hybrid classes, had a defined role they are meant to fulfill on the battlefield. You have leader, controller, defender, and striker. Very easy for new players to grasp and feel good and useful when it comes to their character's performance.
So a lot to unpack here. First off, yes, that is not a typo. There are 46 classes in D&D 4e. That does not include hybrid classes where you can fuse classes together.
My brain did the dice thing. I was like, is it 4d6 or is it 46?
It is 4-6.
How
so
much
yes,
damage did I take?
A ton of classes, this 4e has a ton of options, and we're going to hear a lot about those options as we keep talking. But let's talk about the roles. So yes, there was, generally speaking, 4 roles that any given class would have attached to them. So a cleric, for example, was what was called a leader, and a leader in combat was mostly responsible for healing, for buffs, for a little bit of control of the enemies and laying down beneficial zones and stuff like that on the
oversight,
on the combat field.
maintenance, the way like a leader would.
Exactly. But most classes also had a secondary role depending on which class you were choosing. Clerics, for example, could kind of lean defender, really get armored up and get in there, and with some correct feats and builds, you can pull a little bit of aggro and be an off defender, is what it would have been called. So you weren't shoehorned into a singular role unless you wanted to, because whatever your role was, whether it was a leader, controller, defender, or striker, if you decided to lean into it, you would be better at it than any other class could possibly be.
Right.
To go over the other roles, there is controller, which controllers are responsible for a few things. They're AoE, number one, AoE damage you can lean into, debilitating status effects on enemies, debuffing of enemies, and controlling the battlefield through forced movement. Lots of forced movement. So forced movement, a beneficial forced movement for your allies and detrimental forced movement against enemies. Defenders are like MMO tanks. You go in there, you pull as much aggro as you can, you beef up your armor class and your punishments for people ignoring your aggro pull. You just get up in there. Paladins and fighters were defenders in 4e. For the most part, that there are also, like, for instance, you could be a paladin, which was a defender, or you could be a blackguard, which is a type of paladin that was a striker. So there were multiple options for classes for different roles.
Yeah, you guys are going to hear a lot about like specific builds for, you can kind of get a lot of this stuff in 5e, but it feels watered down compared to what 4e is really going for, which is like this very concise, like, you are this and you are doing these things.
Which isn't to say that there isn't a lot of wiggle room and plenty of room for homebrewing, because there really is. Like, one of the things about 4E that I'll say is you could build almost anything you want once you understand the system. If you have a thorough understanding of the system, you can get crazy with it.
Yes, there's a lot of optimization, and that's why you're going to see a lot of, or hear about a lot of builds specific. Like, I'm sure we'll get into Lazy Lords and stuff like that.
Yes. Lastly, the most common role, I think there's like 2 times more strikers than any other particular role. Strikers are your DPS classes. They deal the damage. They were usually the best class for newbies because it's pretty straightforward. You're going to do a lot of damage. Just attack. Just get in there and try and kill things. As you kind of progressed in your experience with the system, more experienced players tended to start leaning away from striker because it is the most straightforward in combat and has a tendency to get slightly the most boring.
Yeah, you want some to spice up your gameplay. Do not strike.
Yeah, I wouldn't
something else.
Unless I would say the warlock might be a little interesting because they lean controller, so you can you do a little bit more than just damage.
Okay. Should we move on to power systems?
Let's move on to the power system.
Powers are the special actions your character can perform, ranging from attacks to healing to support abilities like flying through the air. Most will be derived from your class. As a character levels, they can choose from a plethora of different powers available at specific levels. Powers can also be derived from magic items, backgrounds or themes, a character's race, or even a feat. By level 5, characters can have anywhere from 8 to 15 powers they can perform in or out of combat, not including basic attacks and other basic actions. There are 2 power types. Attack powers. These powers are used to damage or hinder others. Some attack powers have beneficial effects as well. And then there are utility powers. These powers have a variety of uses, including granting bonuses. Some are useful only outside of combat. Others are useful only in combat. And some can be used in both situations.
We can finish out all the way down to the bold. Yeah.
There are several classifications that separate powers based on how often they can be used, their usage type. At will, powers can be used any number of times. Encounter powers can be used once per encounter and are renewed after a short rest. Rechargeable powers are powers which can recharge given specific circumstances. And then daily powers can be used once per day. You must take an extended rest to renew these. You'll hear these, I'm going to burn my daily or whatever.
Yeah, that's the terminology you would hear a lot.
Yeah. Action types. Powers require different actions to perform the power. Either standard action, move action, minor action, free action, immediate reaction, immediate interrupt, opportunity action, or no action.
Indeed. So powers are, in a lot of sense, the bread and butter of the combat system. They are almost always something that is really exciting to get. If you're a striker, it's like, oh, level 5, I get a choice between. And that's another thing is you don't just get, here's the thing you get. It's like, okay, it's level 5. I get to pick my next daily. And guess what? There's 25. Ooh. And you can go in a bunch of different directions based on your build. I remember the Ranger, I think it's level 5, gets like a Dance of Blades power where like you deal like 3 weapon dies worth of damage to one enemy, can shift your speed and hit 2 more enemies along the way. It's just cool. So it's like you get movement and damage and cool effects and stuff. And you get these powers from your class. You get them from your equipment. You get them from your background. You get them from sometimes from feats even. And every level you're looking at, okay, what's the next thing that I can do that will really feed into the thing I'm trying to build? You know what I mean? 4E is definitely like a tinkerer's paradise. If you like to do builds, if you like to and I'm not talking about just power gaming. Of course, 4E had plenty of power gaming, but if you were like trying to build a concept, like for instance, I'm currently playing in a 4E campaign where I have what I would call a quote unquote ice paladin or ice knight build, right? And so every step of the way, I'm like, okay, what is the thing here that leans the most into my theme? Like, is it the most optimal? Not necessarily. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's not. But it's fun, it's good, it's cool, and it's it's still effective, even if it's not optimized.
Yeah, there's ways you can do this in 5e. What I see is a lot of 5e stuff exists still from these systems.
Oh, yeah.
In disguise. They just write it into the text of the specific thing. Like, you can do this once per day.
I was reading through a lot of discussions on 4e, and there was a comment that really stuck with me where a commenter said 4E's greatest crime was in their presentation being so clean and precise. Because you look at it and it looks like nothing D&D has ever done before or since. Like you said, in 5e, it's like a wall of text.
Yes.
And that's what people were used to in third edition. But in 4E, it's not. It's like super clean and simplified and
it's
away.
Categorically like these are once per day.
Exactly.
Don't even worry about it. Just read what they do and then once per day.
It's almost like they did too good of a job of presenting like a clean, simple system, and it made all the diehards revolted. So,
but I'm not reading as much. Okay, so now we have a constant sense of progression. 4E was designed with a video game-esque sense of progression in mind. The idea that every level was meant to be exciting as you got new toys to play with and show off, as well as loot being integral to player power level balance. You get 30 levels instead of 20, which we've kind of touched on here and there on the show. Those last 10 levels are nutsos. A constant flow of magic items, feats and powers every single level, Paragon Paths and epic destinies, a builder tinkerer's dream, incredibly balanced, no bad options. There was a major math rebalancing that took place around 2010. So some DLC, I see.
Yeah. So let's go through this bullet point at a time. So 30 levels instead of 20, right? Because this idea of this constant sense of progression, again, this is derived from, at the time, MMOs, Warcraft goes up to level 80 and every level you're getting something, right?
Yeah.
Like it's trying to emulate that dopamine you get.
Yeah. New items, new abilities.
Right. And whether that's a good or bad thing, I'm not, we'll discuss that as we keep going. I'm just trying to tell you like the facts of what was the goals at the time. So they extended it out to 30. But this also had a mechanical function of like really cleanly dividing up the tiers of play.
Yes.
So
They were like soft caps.
yeah, you have 3 tiers of play in 4th edition. Heroic tier, which is 1 to 10. Paragon tier, which is 11 to 20. And then finally epic tier, which is 21 to 30. So heroic tier, your characters are generally kind of what you expect in like levels 1 to 8 of 5e D&D. Like you guys are heroes and adventurers, and you're out and you're doing things and you're making a name for yourself, and you're powerful, and maybe some people know you and know what your deal is, but like you're still new to this whole thing, right? And then you hit Paragon, where like you are a hero of the realm. People know who you are. You are a force to be reckoned with, and you are now getting involved in things that are like threats to entire realms, if not the world.
Yeah, Call of the Justice League style.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff. And then by level 30, now we're like in the Superman realm. Like you are more, you're a legend. You are on the level of Drizzt or Elminster, like, and you are involved with gods and deities, and sometimes you're a chosen or you are a demi-deity.
You didn't hit that T early, did you? On Drizzt?
I'm sure the commenters will let me know if I did.
It doesn't matter if you did or not. They're going to say you didn't.
You're absolutely right. God, we get a lot of comments about that.
Yeah, we do. And I'm pretty sure we do it right the majority of the time.
Yeah. See, I hit the T at the end.
I think it's just when you're speaking quickly, it kind of, you accidentally might hit a Dritz.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. And that's okay. That's okay, everyone. It's okay.
No, it's not. It's clearly not.
It's clearly not okay with some people.
Fucking nerds.
And I'm gonna jump down 4 bullet points to Paragon Pass and Epic Destinies, because these are you could call them subclasses, except for in 4E, like you choose your. They didn't call them subclasses. I don't know if they even had a necessary name for them, but you would choose what is the equivalent of your subclass at level 1 for every class.
Okay.
If basically. I'm a wizard, but what kind of wizard are you? Are you a battle mage? Are you this? Are you that? Are you a summoner, an illusion wizard, whatever? You choose that at first level, and then you would pick things that kind of would fit into that. And then there's your subclass, right?
Right.
Well, these are kind of more subclass-like when we're talking about 5e, your Paragon Pass and your Epic Destiny. So when you reach the next tier of play, you gain a secondary class-like option called your Paragon Path, and then at epic level, Epic Destiny. And this was like a specialization that you would attach onto your class. So, for instance, you're not just a ranger; you're now a Sylvan Archer ranger, and you get a certain set of abilities and powers that progress throughout Paragon tier. From levels 11 to 20.
For the Silver Archer.
The Sylvan Archer, right?
Yeah.
And when it comes to choosing your Paragon Pass, there's a bunch of different prerequisites, and you could do some crazy stuff. Like there are even particular Paragon Paths, like there's one, the Sainted General, which you had to be either a paladin or warlord that also, or you had to be a warlord that had paladin powers. That meant either multi-classing or hybriding.
Okay.
That was the only way to do that particular Paragon Path. And there's hundreds of Paragon Paths. Lots to choose from, but the options were good because if you had a particular thing that you were trying to make, you can't customize the Paragon Path, so having options helped with that.
Yeah, it's this. I have this problem with 5e. Is like there's more than I could ever possibly play, and there's way less to do in that regard in 5e than there is 4e.
There is, yes, absolutely.
Even though they keep adding stuff, and there's a lot.
There is.
They're going to continue to add stuff. Like I guess now we can be an ooze person. I don't know.
A news person?
An ooze.
An ooze? Oh, yeah. The plasmoid from us.
They already had news people. They're called bards.
You're very right. You're absolutely correct. And then Epic Destiny was very similar to the Paragon Path, but it was a lot more of like an ascending from being a mere mortal to something more, right?
Yeah.
So you could become a demigod or an archfey or an archfiend or just like an archmage. A lot of arches.
Regular lore progression stuff. When you get too strong, you have to become God.
Basically.
Yeah.
And again, it would give you a set of abilities and traits and powers that would progress as you approach level 30. Then there's the feats and powers every single level. So almost pretty much every single level As a matter of fact, yeah, it is every single level. You will get either a power, a feat, or both. So you always had something exciting. There was no dead levels.
Yeah, like how every other level is quote unquote dead level for 5e.
Yeah, and it was kind of worse for third edition. So
It's funny. They did away with levels 1 and 2 in 5e are starter levels. Try the game out.
Right.
This is what happens. You can die.
yeah,
But it's easy mode essentially. Third level is where now we're gonna pick the stuff we picked in 4e now.
yeah, exactly.
So you're not so overwhelmed.
But it's also a common complaint I see of like people like, okay, I want to be a stars druid, but I don't have any of my star shit for the first 2 levels. And if we're actually keeping track of XP, I might not hit level 3 for like 8 or 9 sessions. You know what I mean?
Ooh.
And it's like you have to.
No, we get out of level 2. We get if we're starting at level 1, we're out of that shit in like 2-3 games. We're level 3 by then.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying if you're a newbie and you're playing by the rules,
Yeah.
and a lot of people that's how they play, and it is a complaint I see of they want to see a lot of the subclass stuff moved forward for that reason.
No, I think like you did that to yourself by thinking of it that way. Level 3 is level 1. Level 1 and level 2 are try the game.
Well, that's also easy to say as people who've been playing for years.
I have been playing for years.
Yeah, exactly. But
Yes.
like,
Oh, that's what you mean.
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's like, it's easy for us, you
Yeah.
know, like especially with our particular mindset of like we do whatever the fuck we want. But
Yeah,
for a
and
lot
you
of
should.
people who are new and don't know, and you're a first time DM, like you're gonna do what the book says because why wouldn't you? You don't know any better.
You probably should.
Yeah,
also.
and you probably should. It's well structured and stuff, but yeah, so that is a complaint I do see a lot.
That's a strange one because it's
Yeah?
like I think so. Like just start at level 3 if you want your star druid shit.
Yeah.
Just start where you.
I do agree, but what if you have a DM that won't let you?
Hey,
So, you know what? Let us know in the comments if this is a complaint you've seen or have or disagree with.
yeah, I would be interested to know
It's
the
definitely something I've
audience's
seen a lot.
experience
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like our home game stuff is literally just like do whatever. Do it. Does it not sound fun? Then
Yeah.
let's not do that thing.
And to be fair, like when you guys, when I got you, and even the first time I got Freeland to play, that was my mentality off the bat. I'm like, yeah, whatever you guys want. We're starting here. I think we did start at level 3. And I think I did explain like, because fuck the first 2 levels.
Yeah, and I think it was harder for me to. I just stuck it out. You know, I'm like, you know what? These guys say they'll help me out as I play.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll remember which die is
And
the
everyone was-
D20
yeah, everyone was
eventually.
fine.
Yeah,
Everything's fine.
You know, everybody goes through the same stuff. It's just about like, hopefully you guys can be understanding and communicate well at the table.
That
That's, like,
that is
critical.
very, very critical. Okay, I'm gonna do these last 2 bullet points for the
Sure.
short rest. So I'm gonna skip down to the last one because I should have put it above this last one. Another major change they made was the concept of static defenses. Before 4th edition, you had your armor class like normal, but you also had these 3 other defenses that were kind of done in reverse. You had your reflex save, your will save, and your fortitude save, and that would level with you. So it might start off as a +1 or 2, and you know just go up and up and up as you kept leveling. But they were worried that this idea would be counterintuitive to new players, and I think when I first played Pathfinder, which used that exact same system, it was very counterintuitive to me. But part of that is I came for 4th edition. So in 4E, they changed it and they just turned those 3 defenses that basically you would roll to see if you saved into static defenses, very much like armor class, right?
Yeah.
So you have 4 defenses in 4E. You have your armor class, your fortitude, your reflex, and your will. It's a static number based off all your ability mods and equipment and stuff. And, you know, it obviously scales as you level.
Yeah, it's not too far off from saving throws in 5e, but it is different. It's
Yeah.
statted a little bit differently. You can level it separately.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. Lastly, in essence, the combat system for 4th edition really transforms a tabletop RPG into a tactical RPG. And I
It gets crazy too.
It gets crazy.
It gets really, really in depth.
Playing 4E without a grid is nigh impossible.
You
and
shouldn't do
honestly
it.
takes away from the experience.
Yeah, it's meant to play on grid.
Yes. And a lot of people for years, and especially when it was happening, were pointing fingers at 4E and saying it was trying to be like an MMO. And in some ways they were correct. But this is actually where I disagree, because the combat in 4th edition is nothing like an MMO. It is exactly like a tactical RPG.
Yeah.
Like it is way more reminiscent to Final Fantasy Tactics than it is to World of Warcraft. The biggest part of that is the grid system, and the grid system's super mattering. But yeah, it's every turn matters. Every turn, every player's doing something cool and different.
The movement is very important.
Movement's very
That's
important.
why there's all this forced movement in the game, and that's like very, very critical.
Yeah, there are a lot of things to keep
success.
track of, but I will say it's a very engaging experience. If you like tactical RPGs or even just like RTSs, if you like strategy and don't mind your combats being a little longer than they are in 5e, then you're going to enjoy this combat because it's very robust. And there's a lot to offer here.
I think rich is the word. Like
Rich. It's very
It's
rich.
the chocolate ganache cake of combat systems.
It really is, absolutely.
You're gonna spend a lot of time eating that cake.
Yes, and
you're
if you don't like that cake, this ain't the edition for you for
No,
sure.
You're gonna
for
feel
sure.
heavy after you eat it.
You
too.
are, you definitely are.
I see like having my 4th edition combats would probably just be standalone sessions, honestly.
Yeah, and it can get like that. And as a dungeon master, that was the only real difficult thing being a dungeon master in 4th edition, was trying to have cool, interesting fights that didn't take an hour plus.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of times it just wasn't possible. And it was just you just took it. It was just part of what the edition.
You're just
right?
trying to trick players into burning their daily too early, kind of.
Right, which, honestly, 5e is not that much different. You
No.
know, you're trying to wear your players' resources down.
Yeah.
Get them to burn their once a days or their X times a days and all that other stuff. And I think another thing that needs to be added before we take the short rest is remember the context. So prior to 4e, there was no, as far as I know, there was no renews upon a short rest idea at all. And most things were literally just, you do it, you can't do it again until the next day.
Right, yeah, it doesn't
whether
come
your
back.
Spell slots or your
Something
abilities
about the
or
rising
whatever.
of the sun.
Yeah, and it led to a phenomenon that was often referred to as the 15-minute adventuring day, where like everyone just burns their stuff and like, okay, we can't do anything anymore. So
Let's go back and take a long rest.
Yeah, we're gonna take a long rest and skip to the next day, right? And so-
you got to repopulate that dungeon overnight somehow.
So, and this was a problem in 3rd edition. And so 4e was trying to solve this problem by having like these tiers of cooldowns, right? At wills, encounters, dailies, et cetera, et cetera. And 5th edition carried all those things over, just disguised them so that people wouldn't realize that that's exactly what they were. Ready for short rest?
When you play 4E and
Yeah.
you're doing your at-wills, do you call them at-Williams?
I do not.
Okay, let's take a short rest.
Take a short rest.
It's the grand adventures of Ilian and Beard.
You know, this is probably our karma because we never hiked down the other mountain. We hiked up it, but then it flipped over, and then we never hiked down it. So now that we're hiking down this one, I feel like we've paid our dues, you know? We've done a whole thing.
I don't know if it's karma, but the gods are cruel, so perhaps you're correct.
They
Ben.
did break the airship, those
Yes,
dastardly gods.
I was about to get into that.
You dastardly gods!
I'm feeling rather torn right now. On one hand, I'm elated that we have 4 shards of substantial supporters, and can only imagine the amount of patronage we'll receive from them. But on the other hand, my prized airship has been completely destroyed.
Yes, it's a funny, this torn feeling you're talking about is kind of funny. It feels very pervasive, like it's everywhere, as if like reality itself has torn.
Mate,
Things feel different
Really?
to you right now?
yes, but I thought it was just my on way.
This is like a new feeling for me, but it also feels like an old feeling, like the feeling before this feeling. I don't know how to explain
a
it.
feeling that should have preceded the feeling that you had now.
Exactly.
Wait, yes.
You're on brand with that.
I think I understand what you're saying. I feel like if I were to cast a spell right now, like one of my level 1 or 2 spells, like it would just be able to be cast over and over again at will. If you understand my meaning.
If I will. If
No,
I will.
like over and over at will.
Yeah.
Yes,
no,
like I
yeah.
could just cast magic missile over and over again.
That is so interesting. Alien, watch out. There's a lot of debris that you might slip on right there. I need you to walk around that and go the other way so you don't fall.
Oh, I'm moving in your direction against my own will. What is this?
That's weird. Did I do I felt like I did a thing?
You just made me use a movement action.
This is weird. What's going on?
I have no idea, but it appears that something is causing reality to behave strangely in a way that maybe it behaved before in the long ago, but should not be continuing to do so now.
I can feel this pool of residual but old anger regarding the state of being. I don't understand what's happening, Alien.
The rules of reality are melding with the physics of our reality, and oh my god, I can't handle this.
I miss our airship. Let's just get down the mountain. Maybe things will be better at the bottom. These southern mountains, the air up here is weird.
I wonder how many squares we'll have to travel down the mountain to get to the bottom.
It's weird.
Why do I keep saying squares?
I can't stop thinking about the squares either. It's like I'm looking at this mountain. It's all like gridded out. It's making me sick. It's making me sick.
Do you ever feel like we are just pieces upon a table being played by more powerful beings than ourselves?
I feel like I feel built differently than I did before we were talking to the Gilder.
I feel like my soul is a sheet of paper with nothing but numbers and dice written upon it.
I don't know what's going on.
Who even is Ilian the Green?
I don't know.
What's happening?
We've returned.
Indeed, we have.
We're fucking back.
Indeed, we are.
We're fourthkin back.
We're
Fucking.
I don't like the sound of that.
Never mind.
No.
If you want to support Alien and Bearn on their quest to retrieve the shards of substantial supporters, they can reassemble
Into
the
the Pendant of
Plenteous
Plenteous
patrons. You can do so by going to patreon.com/thedungeoncast, where we have early episodes, access to show notes that Will writes. You can see actual play content that we've done that only lives in there. And now we have a tier in space, which is an Alien and Bearn centric tier with Alien and Bearn content where you can listen to all the skits so far, and a podcast style, conversational style thing Alien and Bearn do called a tier in space, where they take short rests from their adventures.
Indeed.
It's very fun. Go check it out. Patreon.com/thedungeoncast.
Let me say, Alien and Bearn have to be the most convoluted advertisement for a Patreon ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah, maybe.
And I love it.
I do too.
Okay. All right, so let's get back to 4th edition.
Okay.
So another thing about 4E is it was very much designed to fit an epic high fantasy style of play. Your characters, starting from level 1, are powerful, and they only get more and more epic and powerful. And oftentimes you are fighting insanely powerful monsters. And the thing is, even the would-be mobs, the traditional mobs of D&D, the goblins and orcs and the, I don't know, mephits and whatnot, like, they all get super fucking powerful too. Like, you might be level 15 in, the Fae, and suddenly you're, ambushed by a goblin clan that is just like way above and beyond your standard goblin clan, and they got magic, and they're worshiping some goblin queen god who's ascending to archfatum,
And they're gobbling these nuts.
and I'm just telling you, like, everything is bigger, badder, and better, quote unquote, better
Yeah.
in 4th edition.
The nuts in 4th edition are huge.
They're just so big.
How?
Late game.
Have you seen Van Wilder?
Dude, I saw parts of Van Wilder when I was 12.
Well, if you know, you know, and I'm not going to say it on the show.
Okay, I
so
don't
let's
know.
Move on.
I was just rolling with what you were saying.
It's all good,
Which
brother.
happens a lot on the show, but that's okay.
You
That's
know-
half the charm of the show.
You might, for the people that know,
They know.
They're leaving a YouTube comment, I hope.
I'm sure they are. By the late game, you really are literally on the power level of the gods. You might even be replacing the Pantheon with yourselves, depending on where your story's going.
Fuck off, Moradin. It's me now. But you're an
Look at me.
elf.
Look at me.
No.
I'm the god
No,
now.
it doesn't matter. I'm level 30. What level are you? Level 29?
No, the gods be super high level.
Oh, they go
Like,
up. They're above the 30 cap?
Definitely. If they were statted out, yes, absolutely.
All 5 of us are level 30. We're telling you to get out.
That's true. Action economy, bro.
Yeah. We all have our dailies still. We're in your
All
your
of
realm.
them?
Yeah, you'll die here. You missed my vital organs.
A design goal of D&D 4th edition was to make the games, make the planes, the cosmological planes, more accessible at all levels of play. So at heroic tier, levels 1 through 10, planar travel focused on the Feywild and Shadowfell, which, let's talk real quick about Feywild and Shadowfell. Obviously, the plane of Fairy and the plane of Shadow existed pre-4th edition, but the full fleshed out Feywild and Shadowfell was specifically a 4E invention that carried over to 5E.
I see.
4E attempted to make the planes fun and practical to adventure in, and it's why there's so much goddamn like adventures and splat books and Dungeon and Dragon magazine articles that fill out the outer planes of 4th edition so thoroughly. This was a game that literally existed for 5 years, and we're going to get into it more in the lore section, but it has fully fleshed out stuff that's more fully fleshed out than stuff that's existed for 50 years. They put the work in for sure. But anyways.
Yeah, they're doing comic book level stuff for 4E.
Yeah. So let's get into some non-combat mechanics. One of the major criticisms of 4E is a similar one to 5E in that the game does not provide much in terms of non-combat mechanics. That being said, I think people underestimate what 4E does offer. So the first I would like to talk about is ritual casting. So out of combat utility spells that were too long and complicated to cast in combat but provided powerful effects on an entire party or the environment were often rituals that one could cast, whether you had a ritual scroll or you yourself were had the ritual casting feat or a feature.
Okay, so in this game, it was something that you would have to acquire rather than just certain spells coming with a ritual tag.
Yes, exactly. So basically, a lot of the spells from traditional D&D, like, I don't know,
Speak with animals.
Flesh to stone, speak with animals, that type of stuff didn't exist in the power system, right?
Okay.
So instead they got turned into rituals. And I think rituals in D&D, they varied in their time to cast, but they were anywhere from 10 minutes to a day, depending on the ritual. And there were hundreds and hundreds of rituals. And they were leveled and so like wizards were one of the classes that got ritual casting as a starting feature. So you would start off with like 6 level 1 rituals or something like that.
Okay.
And then as you leveled, you would get like 2 rituals of that level all the way up to level 30. So, you know, wizards maybe didn't feel like 3rd edition wizards that had all these spells, but you kind of did because you had your full power system, which was the combat, which was balanced against all other classes, right? So a wizard in 4E, a level 30 wizard and a level 30 fighter have equal amounts of powers, right? Which is how they kind of level the system. But the wizard also then would have had dozens and dozens of rituals, really cool utility stuff that could be done out of combat that didn't interact with combat in almost any way. So it left combat very balanced.
I see.
So that was one thing. Then there's consumables and crafting. There are a ton of consumables in 4th edition, 254 to be exact, not including the 38 poisons available as well. With the right feat or background, characters are capable of crafting consumables based on ingredients and gold needed. And so maybe you're a ranger and you took the alchemist background or you took the alchemist feat. Now you are capable of, with just some gold, learning recipes for different consumables, right? And so, yeah, your ranger is a striker and you focus mostly on damage, but guess what you're doing when you're not in combat? You're gathering ingredients and making really cool potions and getting everyone equipped and set up, you know?
Crunchy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's always going to be a crunchy player that wants a lot to do.
Yeah.
And here you go.
I am one of those players, by the way. I do like a lot to do. And then there is the skill challenge, the ever divisive skill challenge that I will defend till I die.
So this was a staple of 4th edition.
Yes, this was
instead of
in
homebrew in 5th edition.
In the Dungeon Master's Guide, this skill challenge was published as the official rules of D&D 4e. And essentially, I've explained skill challenges before, but skill challenges are kind of a way of getting through a non-combat encounter in a cinematic turn-based fashion, which can go great with the right group, or it could really rub people the wrong way, depending on who's involved and what people want. But I've always generally liked them. It gives the opportunity for players to decide what they want to do and kind of bullet time and be creative with what they want to do, because there's no set, like, you can do, like, you can or can't do a thing. It's kind of as a group, we decide what seems feasible, and then we decide a check, and we try and hit that check.
Yeah, I like them a lot, and there's a lot of ways you can augment them to be more interesting and fit every situation. I particularly like them for chases.
Yes, absolutely.
There are chase rules in the DMG, like pursuit rules and stuff like that, but they're better with a skill challenge.
Agreed.
Slapped onto it.
Agreed. So let's move to the Dungeon Master side of things.
Do you want me to pick up here? You can kind of comment. Commentary as I read.
Yeah.
4E does a lot to make the DM's job as smooth and easy as possible, as well as so many options for almost everything. Monsters have levels and clearly defined combat roles that make balancing an encounter very easy and pretty dang accurate.
So monsters, much like classes, had roles, far more than 4 roles. I want to say there was like 8 roles plus like 3 or 4 sub roles that any monster could have. Like a monster might be like a solo soldier or an elite skirmisher, and a lurker was another one. Brute is another one. And each of these roles means something different. Like a brute does a lot of damage and has a shit ton of HP, but like no defenses. And like usually a brute is also kind of a creature that lacks intelligence and is very vulnerable to will attack spells and stuff like that. And the Dungeon Master's Guide does a really good job of explaining the roles and how they should be used. 5e, and I don't really know about 3rd edition, but I feel like 5e really lacks in this Dungeon Master direction. Right. Here are some rules. Here are some clearly laid out rules. We've done the math. It's balanced. Tinker with it and play as you will. But if you need help, we have all this stuff written out. You can continue.
Yeah, traps follow the exact same framework. Speaking of which, 4E has 776 officially published traps and terrain hazards, not including the 69 diseases.
So remember when I was talking about options? 4E brings the options, bro. It's like, okay, you need some traps for this dungeon, and like you don't want to just do another fireball coming out of the wall or a pit trap, right? But you're scratching your brain, you can't really think of something. You just refer to the compendium of 4th edition, and we're going to get into the digital tools at the end of this. And now you have 776 options, and like, okay, maybe you don't have an actual 776 options because your character's a level 4, so you have to do stuff that's like between level 2 and level 7, but you're having dozens and dozens of options at any tier of play. I believe the 5e Dungeon Master's Guide has like 4 officially published traps, and then they just give you the rules for like you making your own traps and like what the damage and attack rolls and saves should be for that, which is useful. That is useful. But it's also nice to be able to just be like, oh, I never even thought of like an acid pit full of fucking ooze piranhas. I don't know. And it's like, and I don't have to make it up. It's right there. You just grab it and put that in your game, It's nice, man. It's really cool.
I think the DMG gives you like 4 dungeon hazards, like a slime, some webs, some gas, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Might not even be 4. 4E also had digital tools to help browse all these options, albeit at a subscription price. Oh, that sounds familiar. The service was called D&D Insider, which I had and loved. Dang, D&D Insider. Similar to D&D Beyond, but more streamlined and comprehensive. Also, you didn't need to buy all the books. You just paid $15 a month for access to all published content. It was amazing. Now you have to do both. You have to buy the books and subscribe.
This was $15 a month, and literally anything new that came out, anything that was ever published, Dungeon magazines, the Dragon magazines included, all at the tip of your finger, all extremely well organized. You could say what you want about like a continuous payment subscription. It was one of the best subscriptions I ever had. It was worth it for me as a dungeon master that was playing in games like twice a week, and it is far superior to anything that they offer these days. So.
That doesn't exist anymore, huh?
No, but I will talk about there are offline tools that exist. And you just Google 4E Compendium and 4E Offline Character Builder, and you'll find your way.
Yeah, and also take a drink.
Oh, damn it. No, it's the first time in forever my phone's gone off.
It has been a while. I'll give you that.
Precautions.
It's been at least a dozen episodes, I would say. Since
that's 3 months, man. That's 3 months.
It's not bad.
I'm just going to let it play. I want to ride. See how far we go. All right. Continue.
There was also a fully comprehensive character builder you got with the same subscription.
Yes, you also got and again, remember I told you about the options. It wasn't 5e with 12 classes that each had like 6 to 10 subclasses. This was 46 classes
It's a
You know
lot.
what? Fuck. Yeah, I'm gonna pull up the compendium right now. I'm gonna tell you I'm gonna give you some numbers.
Yeah, I'll continue
quick.
on
Yeah,
while you're
yeah,
doing
yeah.
that. If anyone listening is interested, there are ways to access similar fan-made tools these days. Since
they're
the
all
original tools went
fan-maintained,
offline almost 10 years ago, just Google 4E Compendium and 4E Offline Character Builder, and you will find your way.
That you shall.
That you shall.
Back to the options that you would have in this character builder. There's 77 classes, 577 Paragon Paths, 115 Epic Destinies, 9,409 powers, 3,271 feats, 360 rituals, over 1,900 items, 630 weapons, 640 magical implements like staves and wands and all that other stuff, 490 armor, 193 companion animals. Deities kind of matter. There's 134 deities, 38 poisons, 69 diseases, 5,326 monsters, 776 traps and terrains, 55 races, 808 backgrounds, and 116 themes. And this character builder had it all in there for you at $15 a month.
That's pretty cool.
I thought it was pretty cool.
I kind of wish it worked like that. A great way to solve your monetization problem, $15 subscription-based thing that is such a convenient tool. People are going to rely on it for convenience.
Yeah.
And they're going to continue to subscribe as long as they're playing the game.
Yep.
And now you've made it easy for them to play the game. See, now I need to buy hundreds of dollars worth of books to supplement my subscription plan.
Yeah.
Plus the microtransactions for the VTT that they've implemented.
Yep.
They're really trying to squeeze the juice out of the system. And, it's probably mostly working, seems like.
I'm sure it is.
And now they're going to they're going to remake the books so that everybody that's been playing needs to drop another few $100 to re-up their
I will say that the game is due for a revamping. Like no D&D system has lasted this long before it got it.
Yeah.
I think, as much as I agree with everything you're saying, because I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but I do want to say that I think 5e as a system, the fact that it was strong enough to last 10 years before this happened is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. There's this thing where you've been fucking around with the money and now it's time for the regular money thing and it looks bad because you've been fucking around.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So, we've made our opinion about what's going on in the monetization of the game known.
Yep.
Hasbro showed their hand. I'm less on Wizards of the Coast than I am on Hasbro these days.
Yeah, they're the ones calling the shots.
just-
So
There's a lot of Wizards of the Coast people are like fucking writers and stuff. I don't blame them. I blame like the powers that be that control the money aspect. It's just all so dystopian.
indeed.
Would you like me to read this stuff?
Let me hop on the lore stuff.
Okay.
So the original setting, known as the Nintir Vale, and then later actually known as Nerath. So to pair with the radical change in rules, Wizards of the Coast also introduced an entirely new setting to serve as the default setting of the game. I've heard it said that one of the driving factors of this was to distance the game from the old default setting of Greyhawk due to discrepancies over WotC's ownership of Gary Gygax's original setting at the time.
Yeah, there was a lot of legal shit that went on.
Yes. So now 4E's default setting has been a point of some contention on the show. This is because the whole thing can be a bit confusing. When 4E launched with its unnamed Points of Light setting, it was less of an actual setting and more of a campaign concept meant to be built upon.
Okay.
4E introduced a new world, which eventually became called Nerath, and a default starting area called the Nintir Vale. The premise of the Points of Light setting is that the world has fallen. Civilized people now live in small, isolated settlements, the Points of Light, scattered across a dark and dangerous world. The areas between the Points of Light involve dangerous stretches of wilderness, marauded by humanoids, bandits, and monsters. Scattered ruins of prior civilizations and failed attempts to quell the wilds dot the landscape. But beyond that, there were no maps beyond one small region, no world name until much later, no concrete history or canonical cities. It was very bare bones, but it was also rich in possibilities. But this all became less and less true as 4th edition went on. All the lore was rewritten to fit this setting. Pantheons were rewritten. Planes of existence were completely redone. Cosmic powers, etc. Every monster entry in every book, every lore article written in every Dungeon and Dragon magazine, every adventure module, every new source book was written to be completely cohesive with this new setting. And before you know it, The newly named World of Nerath had an amazingly robust setting, a setting that actually rivaled some other much older settings in both quality and quantity.
Yeah, it's the DC
That's
Universe
my opinion.
reboot of Dungeons
It's the
and Dragons.
new 52 of and now I'm so far out of comics. I know they had another reboot that I don't remember the name of, and Convergence I think it was, and I don't even know what's happened since then.
We've gotten away from the knowing what's going on in comic books for
It's
sure.
Very true. Yeah,
The MCU happened, and now it's unhappening.
it's unhappening
slowly
before my eyes.
God.
So the quality part is subjective. I admit that. That's just my opinion. But as someone new to the hobby at the time and without knowledge of the prior 40 years of tradition, the lore I was voraciously reading in my newfound passion for the hobby was pretty damn fantastic, if you ask me.
Yeah, you just don't have to not know about the other stuff to make it cool.
Right. Also, I want to throw this in there because this actually ties into a conversation we were having before the show. I'm one of the weirdos that thinks Ocean's 12 is the best of the trilogy. I'm one of the weirdos that thinks Final Fantasy 8 is one of the best of the series. I'm one of the weirdos that thinks Zelda 2 is better than Zelda 1, and I love Zelda 1. Yes, I like the weird offbeat redheaded stepchildren of franchises. I don't know why. I don't mean to.
I mean, they're good in their own way. I think
They're good in their own way,
I think
yeah.
a lot of the reasons people don't like those things is because they have
They deviate.
the attachments of the first one, and
Right.
yeah, that's oh, this isn't the same sandwich I made yesterday for lunch.
Exactly.
You have both now.
you have both
Why
now.
do you have
Yeah.
to be
That's kind of
mad
gonna
at
be-
one for not being the other when you have this one? I don't. Yeah. I
Well,
don't know.
okay. And we are going to get into that, and I agree completely. But I will also throw out the context of at the time when it was happening, everyone thought that this was the future. And everyone who was a fan of the old thought that was gone forever.
Oh well, I mean,
And we
I
know
could
that's
see
not
that.
true now.
Yeah.
But back then, it very much seemed that way for a few years.
Just the foundation of the game, as I understand it, always makes this argument so weird to me. Like, you have the thing, just do the thing you want.
Exactly.
Like, you have this other thing too. Yeah.
And to be fair, that is what a lot of people did. We're going to get into it. We're going to
Okay,
get
okay,
into it.
okay.
Okay. So adding to the confusion, though, and this is one of my main points about this, is the fact that 4E published other setting source books, namely Forgotten Realms, Eberron, and Dark Sun. But of all the settings published during the 4E era, only one was forced to conform to the new cosmology and lore of the new default setting, Forgotten Realms.
okay.
Forgotten Realms writers were brought into a room and tasked with aligning the realms with the new status quo. An upending of the cosmos, the spell plague, death of a ton of gods, a new map due to a major calamity, and many a retcon later, and the bloody deed was done.
Shout out to the spell plague.
I forgot we were doing that. Shout out to spell plague.
I did not forget.
We're going to do episode one day.
I know we will.
Yeah, only to need to be undone when 5e launched and decided to use Forgotten Realms as the new default setting. So I still to this day don't understand why they do this. Diggy, if you're listening, I would love your insight. I know Salvatore and Ed Greenwood both like rebelled against this.
Yeah,
but
they were not
eventually
happy.
Their hands were forced because it just like you didn't do it to Eberron. You didn't do it to Dark Sun. Those settings lore remained exactly the same and unchanged. But for Forgotten Realms, you just insisted, and why? It upset everybody, and I would point to as the major reason why 4E did ultimately fail is it was your most popular setting, and you stabbed it in the heart and said, and then told everyone it was okay.
Shh, it's fine.
Exactly.
Go sleep.
It's just it was a weird choice, and I don't understand it. And it also is very ironic because 5e then they decided to switch to Forgotten Realms as the default setting. And oh yeah, by the way, we're going to try and put everything back the way it was.
Weird.
So we are going to get into backlash and effects of 4th edition later. But I want to point here at the forcing of Forgotten Realms to align with the new setting as one of the worst mistakes of the era. And one of a few major points of contention that led to 4E's ultimate failure. Change is hard. The changes 4E was implementing were already a lot for longtime fans to deal with. But forcing such a massive change to your most popular setting is shoving down the throats of your fans, and in some cases even the writers, is not going to end in anything but bad blood.
Yeah, I commend 5e for making gradual change over time. That's the best way to go about it.
Indeed.
Like what we do with this show.
Yeah. And 4E's lore was massively different from previous editions, as many long-time listeners of the show are probably all too aware. The changes and differences in lore are far too numerous to list, but I will briefly touch on some of the biggest ones. The first being the realigning of the cosmos. So prior to 4th edition, you have the Great Will Cosmos, which is what we use now, right? You have the material world, some inner planes, the elemental planes. Now we have the elemental chaos, the 4E thing, and then the outer planes, right? The spiritual realms. So 4E completely just threw that away and straight into the garbage. Kept the material plane and added like the echoes of the Feywild and the Shadowfell, and so it was like this trinity of worlds constantly connected. The outer planes are now divided into the astral sea, which are like the heavens above, and the elemental chaos, which are like the hells below. Except for actual hell, the 9 hells are in heaven now. They're now in the astral sea because they're divine, right? Asmodeus is a god, so his realm is up in the astral sea. And the astral sea is kind of like this huge spiritual void, with the realms of gods being like floating cities or planets or planetoids or whatever. And, you know, it's a realm of thought, and like you travel via like your willpower and stuff like that.
Yeah, like a translucent overlay on the regular universe or something like that.
Yeah.
Like a second universe.
Yeah, like a second universe. Yeah, sure. Elemental planes, we don't like those anymore for some reason. I don't know why, but we don't like those. For now, we're gonna have one thing called the elemental chaos. Yeah. And we're gonna put it below the material plane, and it's like the basis, the foundation of all creation is here.
It's other universe
chaos, right?
also,
but
all
also
separate.
Asmodeus chucked the abyss down there because he's Asmodeus and he can do crazy shit.
Fuck it.
Then there's the far realm, which was a lot more fleshed out and established and like existed outside of this bubble that we've created, right? Stars are eldritch beings that hate the world, and we've talked about that in the Starspawn episode.
It's another universe, but over here. It doesn't get to sit with us.
No, it doesn't. So a new but not entirely new pantheon. Basically, the 4E pantheon is the greatest hits of gods, right? It's all the bangers. It's all the radio hits. So you have just all the most popular gods between Forgotten Realms and Greyhawk. You have Coralon, you have Moradin, you have Bane, you have Asmodeus, of course, Tiamat, Bahamut, etc., etc. But then there's some new faces, some straight up new gods that they invented for the pantheon, who ended up proving to be very popular. At least 2 of them did. Melora, the new goddess of the wild and the ocean. Arathis, the goddess of civilization and invention. The Raven Queen. We know all about her. And then an evil deity named Zahir, who lived in a floating mountain called Mount Titherion, where he lived in the bowels of it, and Tiamat vied for territory but above in the peaks.
Okay.
Whole thing.
Like actual dragons do.
Yeah.
Okay.
A new history. Essentially, they just took the Forgotten Realms Dawn War, but more defined it. We have new and more primordials, and now they're all named, and they all have a bunch of cool names, and like cool like stories about how they died and where they're in prison now and shit.
Okay.
New origins of demons and devils, the introduction of the Shard of Evil, the introduction of like a world where the abyss swallowed everything, and then when there was nothing left, what remained of the demon lords created the Shard of Evil and shoved it into this world because they're trying to come in. There's Dune is back. He's better and stronger than he ever was.
Hell yeah.
But it doesn't end there. Monsters, races, outer beings, almost all got entirely new and revamped lore and origins. And yeah, if you were a diehard fan that liked the way things were, this would be very upsetting. I mean, it just would be. Even it doesn't matter how cool it was, and it was very cool. It doesn't matter because I mean that is pretty brutal. I will say that.
Let us, if you're a gatekeeper that was upset around this time, let us know in the comments.
Yeah, you can take over. We'll stop bullet point by bullet point.
Regardless of whether 4E was good or bad, it provoked a lot of backlash. Many fans still love 3.5. Understandable. You've had it for all this time.
Yeah.
You know, the new GSL gaming license was way more limiting and in some ways unusable for third parties, which is why there is pretty much zero 4E third party content, no 4E video games, etc.
This
sounds familiar.
This is a major point because it's the gaming license that leads to Pathfinder. Yes, the backlash of people loving 3.5 very much also made it possible, but it's actually the gaming license that made it happen, because if they had gone with their original OGL, Pathfinder would have just, or Paizo would have just kept publishing D&D modules. That's what they wanted to do, but they were basically stopped by the gaming license. And I also find it extremely ironic that the edition that is taking the most cue from video games we've ever seen and is trying to tap into that audience, has basically made a game license that's made it almost impossible for third parties to make 4E video games, which 4E, of all the editions,
Would have been the best video game.
would have probably been the best video game, but now I don't know because Baldur's Gate 3 is so good.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. But that being said, at the time, it was definitely the most ready to be transported straight into video games. And I'm telling you right now, if there was a Kickstarter that wanted to turn the 4E base rule set into a tactical RPG, I would throw all my money at it because that game would be amazing.
All of it?
All of it.
Let's see. The above led to the creation of Path. Oh yeah, you're just saying that. This backlash led to the old school renaissance and the creation of many successful OD&D clones, including but not limited to Dungeon Crawl Classics, Old School Essentials, and more.
So yeah, this 4E not only riled up the 3.5ers, but it riled up the grognards. The grognards who were already riled up about 3.5. Like we're talking old school dudes that thought 3.5 was already too outrageously deviant from the first and second editions.
I see.
And I say that in like I understand, and I'm not making fun of you, especially because it did lead to some really cool systems, so I'm not complaining. But there is a Dungeon Crawl Classics podcast I used to listen to, and in the first 10 episodes, there was a lot of hate thrown towards 4E and 3.5.
Fun.
But yeah, like so it led to this movement of creating systems that basically modernized the old, often inaccessible systems of original D&D, advanced Dungeons & Dragons, 2E, et cetera, et cetera. And they did so in really cool ways. I love Dungeon Crawl Classics, and I'm interested in Old School Essentials. So
Yeah, you can catch some Dungeon Crawl Classics on our Patreon. Oh, take a drink.
I did.
You sure did. Yeah, we played. Will ran us through some Dungeon Crawl Classics. It was fun. There's a lot of death.
You guys enjoyed. A lot of death.
up
A lot
front.
of death. But that's part of the fun.
Yeah, you run 4 characters.
And then you see who lives at the end.
Yeah, and then 3 of my characters fucking died.
Yeah.
Mercilessly died.
Yes, they did. A lot. I think over 50% of all the characters died. So essentially, Dungeon Crawl Classics has this thing called the level 0 funnel, where every player at the table runs a whole 4 to 6. I usually go with 4 level 0 characters, and after the adventure, which is supposed to serve as their origin story, they get to become level 1 adventurers and choose a class and all that other stuff.
Only the lucky survive.
Indeed.
But did 4E as a whole fail? Well, yes. And no, I guess. Yes, it failed. I'm going to say it failed, yes.
Do you want me to
but
read
also
this?
No.
I can read this.
4E was launched with maybe not with the pursuit of intention. Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
But did 4E as a whole fail? Well, yes and no.
Yes. It did.
4E was launched with maybe not the purest of intentions. It was completely tone deaf to the fandom. It predicted the market's direction poorly with its insistence on leaning towards video game style mechanics. It created more than one rival in that market, and it gave D&D a polarizing reputation in the tabletop RPG space, which is saying something because D&D has always kind of had a polarizing reputation in the TTRPG space.
Okay.
But it also succeeded with massive sales that ultimately were extremely profitable, if short of what they were aiming for. It may have lost them a not insignificant number of old fans, but the strategy to bring in new fans did work. 4E was a game full of newbies everywhere you looked. I was one of those newbies, and let me tell you, we were all very hooked.
You could tell they worked really fucking hard on it.
You absolutely, yes, you definitely can.
Like,
Like
that
this was a product that lots of care and hard work went into.
Yeah, when I look at 4E stuff, I see the multitude of things they were doing to monetize it, but we're putting an equal amount of hard work into it to get that yield, and I appreciate that. I don't see that as much in the new age here.
I do agree with that. So furthermore, almost everyone will tell you, whether they loved or hated 4E at the time, that 4E did succeed at creating a robust, well-crafted, deep, and satisfying system that was also balanced and more accessible than any edition prior to it. It created a unique, flavorful, and tactile experience that rewarded teamwork and thoughtful character creation. Perhaps 4E's worst crime was having the D&D name attached to it. It was so different from its predecessors that it didn't look or feel anything like the game so many had come to love. I personally believe that it had been launched as a spin-off D&D product. D&D Tactics, for example, is a name. Or a new tabletop RPG altogether. It would have become critically acclaimed, I think. People would have been like, oh, how innovative, how interesting, how different. But because it was D&D 4E, it was doomed.
You
before
ruined
it
my
started.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Indeed. So do I recommend people give it a try? Absolutely. It's not much like 5e, and that's a good thing. Different RPGs do different things. I play 5e when DMing for new players or wanting to have a more flexible experience. I play Dungeon Crawl Classics when I want a brutal old school but also very gonzo experience. And I play 4e when I want to play a high fantasy tactical RPG, where I am watching the meticulous work I spent on character building unfold on the battlefield. I want to gather all the sweet, sweet loot. I want to kill all of the monsters, demons, and gods. Let's fucking go.
Yeah. Sounds good to me. I mean, like my experience with the game, 3 sessions, it was essentially it's the same core as many TTRPGs, which is you're going to go fantasy, explore, adventure, mob stuff, like it's essentially they're all the same game. It's these overlays of rules and mechanics that make them unique. And then, you can have the lore or not in any setting. And that's fine.
Yeah.
So if you strip that away, it's, combat is the main thing that's different.
Agreed.
And it is, you should like watch a video or something.
Combat and character creation.
Yes.
And they're hand in hand.
Yes. 100%. The things that drive the mechanics of combat are obviously linked to that. So yes, that's my takeaway from the main differences of 4e to 5e. If I was to explain it to somebody offhand, the lore is all different. The mechanics are all different, but essentially you're going to sit down and pretend to be somebody that you're not and have a great time.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. And then you can make a big flaming bird once a day that you shoot out of your fists and like uppercut somebody with. And you can say Falcon Punch when you do it.
Absolutely.
Which is what I did.
Yes. And that wasn't once away. That was an Atwell.
Oh, yeah.
Flame Hawk. Hell yeah.
I did have a flame. I was a dwarf that had a flame hawk.
And you could turn into, real quick.
I was a dwarf druid.
You were a dwarf druid who turned into a bear shark. It was great. But here's one of the differences between 5e when it comes to the bear shark. So in 5e, you can turn into different animals and there's different stat blocks. For your bear shark, we'd have to come up with something and homebrew something.
Yeah.
For 4e, it didn't matter whatever you wanted to be. It could look however you want. Your druid would get different abilities if you were in beast form versus not beast form.
Yeah.
And that was it. So bear shark just fit right in. We didn't have to homebrew shit.
Nope. Yeah, it was good.
All right. I think that's a good place to leave it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go to a long rest time.
Indeed.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the long rest. This is the part of the episode where we interact with you and the audience. We want to say what's up. Thank you. We really appreciate you guys. And I hope you liked having 4th edition finally explained in its totality to you. And like, there's more, we do it when it comes up in an episode. Will goes through the painstaking fine-tooth comb of the lore to get everything from the past. And 4E comes up a lot. Honestly, fills out a lot of the episode notes.
It does. Whenever there's a monster that has like no lore, it's cool. I'll get all that, and then I'll go to 4E and have like triple that amount of lore in one place.
Yep, and now you have all the tools to play with whatever it is we're talking about. So I always appreciate it. Like, the 4E stuff is better. I'm going to use that. Like Raven Queen 4E is probably the one of the mains that you would cite. But anyway, this is a patron voted topic. We want to thank everybody that voted on Patreon, nominated this topic, have fought for it since we started doing these polls.
It was a long road, and this episode and the next episode, spoiler alert, it's another Patreon episode, were both topics that were long, hard fought in the polls, and finally they've seen their victory days.
You earned it. I'm gonna go ahead and start shouting out patrons after I talk about how I blew the dust off of the oldest Slippies I have. Maybe not the oldest, but they're definitely from a while ago.
Yesteryear, yeah.
Yeah, and I can put them on once a day.
Awesome.
All right, I did the Slippies thing.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's for the people that are like, I miss the Slippies. I did it for you. Okay, so we have back-to-back patron topics, like Will was saying. The schedule just has kind of broken out this way, and so I'm going to read all of the shout-outs, or should I read half the shout-outs this episode, half the shout-outs next episode?
That sounds good to me.
We don't have like a super lot, so I'll do down to, let's see, how many do I have total? We got 9. I'll do 5 this episode, 4 next episode. In no particular order, we've got Nick Amon.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks for the upgrade. Now he's a woo. There, a woo. Black Jester.
Thank you, Black Chester.
It's been a while.
It's been a bit.
Charlotte.
Thank you, Charlotte or Charlotte.
We don't have a tier in space. Call
A
out.
tear in space.
A tear in space.
No,
Yeah.
it's not. Is that?
No, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's what we'll do.
Charlotte has joined a tier in space, and then
A tear in space.
Thank you. That's very good. And then we got Matthew Gano.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you. And for the last one for this episode, I'll get the rest of you on the next one. We have the half-drunk bearded tiefling who thinks he's a dwarf. Did we already do these?
I don't know.
Did we
I
already
don't
do
remember
these
saying
ones?
that. The half-drunk tiefling who thinks he's a dwarf.
Sometimes I see them come in on the email, and
Yeah.
I think
You get
the
that
half-drunk
deja
bearded
vu.
halfling who thinks he's a dwarf.
Thank you, guy.
Annual subscriber.
Annual subscriber. Oh yeah.
Okay. And that's all. Thank you, everybody that continues to subscribe on Patreon. It makes a huge difference in our lives. It's one of the best ways that you can support the show. Ilian and Bjorn live there. You can go check them out at A Tier in Space. A Tier in Space is also where we put all of our one-page RPG actual plays that we were doing for a while. So those, I've got like 2 more, I think, to upload that I got to get to eventually. I'm slowly chipping away at the backlog.
Did you do
I'm
the
getting
chicken
there.
one yet?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was. I think I have the back half of Dungeon Crawl Classics to upload, and then I have like one more game after that. So if the chicken, I'm pretty sure you guys did the chicken ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I did that one. That one's probably there. It's like Goblin Punk. It's like a bunch of one-page RPGs. Goblin Punks. What is that chicken one called?
That's a good question.
There's a dungeon called
there's something
Classics.
wrong with the chickens. I think it's called. Yeah.
And a handful of others that you can check out at
5
A Tier
Second
in
Rule
Space.
was another one we did.
Now we do A Tier in Space, an episodical conversational style podcast that we do in character as Ilian and Bjorn. It's really fun. You guys should check it out. And yeah, that's it. I think we're just going to hit you with that regular recorded long rest and call it a game here.
All right, let's call it a game. We'll talk to you guys later.
Well, we'll call it past us. We'll call it a game in the long rest recording.
yeah, what you said.
Bye. We got Drakenstar news. What is it, Will?
Starseeker's Guide to Drakenstar, the backer kit is finally closed. No longer taking pre-orders. Thank you, everyone, for supporting it. We raised just enough money to get all this done, and I'm very proud of it. Can't wait to get it into your guys' hands. This last week and a half, I have been battle testing for hours and hours on end between all the starships and making tweaks and adjustments. We should have this thing finished when it comes to the writing and editing by the end of June. Hopefully, we'll be looking at the formatting and design done by the end of July and production beginning in August. Very excited, and thank you guys again. Can't wait to give you guys more news as things develop.
Yeah, congratulations, Will, on getting that closed out, and good luck on the next upcoming stuff for you. We've got a new merch shop that is running in tandem with our old merch shop. So the old merch shop is still around, but you can find the new merch shop at babayagasyardsale.com.
Indeed, where fan of the show Dustin is the artist and curator and owner of the store, and he's been making some really killer Dungeoncast content on there. The Bahamut's Gym and a couple of the Demogorgon ones being my favorite. We have more coming in the works, but if you have not checked out these designs, I highly recommend you go check them out because they look super cool. Link is in the description. I've never been so excited about Dungeoncast merch before.
We need an ooze Roomba.
Absolutely. Anything news related, I'm super down. I need to make some orders. I need to order some of these shirts and sport them on the show.
We need we need an ooze Roomba with a claymore like poking out of it. So one that can also is home defense.
Absolutely.
It cleans your house and stabs your cat.
Well, talk to Dustin, man.
Yeah.
See what it,
Maybe
see
he'll
what,
hear this and
Yeah.
it'll happen. Anyway, thank you to everybody who has been sending letters, emails. We are going to be reading those at the end of the show. So if you want to reach out, I believe it's 1784 Upland, California, 91786 for our PO box, but that is down in the description below. Do not go off of what I just said. And then you can go off of what I'm going to say for this, you can email us at thedungeoncast@gmail.com with some fan mail. We will read it on the show if it's appropriate. If it's inappropriate, I'll just look at it and giggle. And if you guys want to do that, we're also, as you know, reading YouTube comments, Apple Podcast reviews. All this stuff is really great. We like interacting with you guys, but the Apple Podcast reviews in particular help boost the show. The algorithm notices your love and will peddle it to others that may want to love the Dungeoncast as well, even though they don't know it yet.
Yeah. Also, feel free to send questions if you have questions for us, and if there are on topic, like I don't see any reason why we can't read and talk about, answer those really quickly.
Yeah. You guys don't know the future of what we're going to record, but if you had a question about something we said or blah, 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 YouTube comment is good, but email or, snail mail is fine too.
Yeah.
We'll read it. Anyway, we got,
Social media
plugs. What do we got going on in social media, Will?
We got Instagram, we got X, formerly known as Twitter, we got Threads, we got Mastodon. Links are all in the description. I have been a little bit more active on there lately, but whenever there's something pertinent, you guys will be seeing stuff on there.
Yep. And we've got Discord. So if you guys would like to join our Discord,
that's
you can
the big one.
Ask us in real time, more or less.
Yes.
We do get around.
That's where the community for the show in a big way lives, is on Discord. It's constantly awesome to see all the chatter and all the sharing and it's just the bonding, and us getting in there too in the mix is nice. And I would say that's the number one social media platform for the Dungeoncast. Is check out the Discord. Yeah, it's more like a greater tabletop RPG sort of community. It kind of extends beyond the Dungeoncast. But, It does.
We are on there and available, including Jake, your special guest Jake, and Josh Freeland, who will answer questions. A lot of people will tag them for Super Quest Saga stuff sometimes, or FBAT stuff. So go check that stuff out. Are we missing anything? Is that the end of it?
No, I think that covers it. That really
man.
does.
All right. Well, we're gonna call it a game.
All right, we'll call it a game. We'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
The Dungeoncast.
Poison. Don't do it. End episode.